Today we're going to talk about one of the world's very first real cities. But it begs a bigger question, right? How did we as a species make that huge leap from tiny, scattered villages to the massive cities we all live in today? Well, it turns out the original blueprint for that whole transformation was drawn up thousands of years ago, right here.
And you've got to understand, this wasn't just about getting bigger. No, this was a complete rewrite of how humans live together. It's the origin story for, well, almost everything. Complex societies, government, even writing, basically civilization as we know it, and it all kicked off in one specific place.
To get to the bottom of this, we have to travel back in time, way back. We're talking thousands of years ago, to ancient Mesopotamia in what's now modern-day Iraq. This city, is where we find the blueprint, the original design for so many things that we just take for granted in our own lives.
Okay, so let's get into it. The first part of any good blueprint is the foundation, right? For that foundation was the land itself. You see, you can't just plop down a city anywhere and expect it to work. The location has to be just right.
The story of really can't be told without talking about its home, Mesopotamia. And the name, well, the name tells you pretty much everything you need to know. Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers. These two legendary rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, were the absolute lifeblood of this region. They turned dry, arid land into fertile ground, creating the perfect conditions for a revolution in how people lived. So what were these magic ingredients that made this one spot so special? Well, here they are. First, you had a constant source of water for drinking and, crucially, for farming. Second, that water left behind super fertile soil. And third, the rivers themselves were like natural superhighways for transport and trade. Put those three things together, and you have the perfect recipe for a tiny village to grow, over generations, into a seriously powerful city.
So with this perfect foundation in place, the people of built their society on three incredibly powerful pillars. Think of them as the engines that powered the whole civilization. They had sophisticated farming, a centralized religion, and they were masters of long-distance trade.
Now, farming was the bedrock of everything, but there was one huge problem. Southern Mesopotamia just didn't get enough reliable rain to feed thousands and thousands of people. So, how on earth did they pull it off? The answer is just pure human ingenuity. They didn't sit around and wait for the weather to cooperate. They actually engineered their environment. They dug this massive, complex network of canals and ditches that brought river water to their fields. This created a huge surplus of food. But what's really fascinating here is that this wasn't just an engineering project, it was a social project. It took planning, cooperation, and organization on a scale that nobody had ever seen before. It really laid the groundwork for a more complex society. All right, let's talk about that second pillar. For the people of religion wasn't, a thing you just did on the weekend. It was woven into the very fabric of their daily lives. The temples weren't only places for worship, they were these massive economic and administrative hubs that controlled land, managed workers, and stored goods. They were the center of everything. You see, every Sumerian city had its own special divine protector. For that was the moon god, Nana. This gave the city a really unique spiritual identity, and it was a powerful focus for everyone's collective efforts. And nothing, absolutely nothing, symbolized this deep connection between the divine world and the human world more than the incredible buildings they created. They were literally trying to build a bridge between heaven and earth. And the Great Ziggurat of is the most famous example of this. It was this gigantic stepped temple, like a man-made mountain reaching for the sky. But it was also a statement. It was shouting to the rest of the ancient world that it had the resources, the leadership, and the skills to build something truly epic. It was a symbol of absolute order and power.
Okay, let's move to our third and final pillar, which connects everything together: trade. I mean, just look at this chart. Was swimming in stuff like grain and textiles, but they were desperately lacking in other things. The whole region had almost no good stone, no timber, and no metals. So to build those huge temples, or even just equip their craftspeople, they had no choice. They had to trade.
And this need to trade created something totally new, a complex urban economy. Suddenly, not everyone could just be a farmer. You needed specialists, people making pottery and textiles for export. You needed merchants to go out and make the deals, boatmen to move the cargo, and a whole class of officials and scribes just to keep track of it all. This, right here, is what makes a city a city.
So, let's recap.
You've got a booming city, a complicated economy, and massive building projects. All of that complexity needs what you might call an operating system to keep it all from falling apart. You absolutely need systems for management and control.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. You have thousands of people, tons of grain coming in, countless trade deals going out. It's a massive information overload. How do you remember who paid their temple offerings, what's stored in the warehouse, or who's supposed to be digging which canal? You just can't keep it all in your head.
The solution they came up with was so revolutionary, it changed the course of human history forever. They invented a technology to store information outside of the human brain.
So what was the first thing they wrote? Was it epic poetry, love songs? Nope, writing was invented for bookkeeping. As you can see here, they were basically creating the world's first spreadsheets on clay tablets. They were just trying to keep track of the city's economy. This system of writing is called cuneiform, and it was a total game changer.
And here's the crucial takeaway from all this. The ability to record and store complex information was the key that unlocked large-scale government. For the very first time, leaders could create laws that applied to everyone, track taxes over a huge territory, and manage a kingdom with a level of control that was just impossible before. This was, quite literally, the birth of the state.
So, this brings us to the big picture. All these thousands of years later, why should we still care about some ancient city made of mud bricks? Well, because the blueprint for city life, for civilization itself, was first drafted right here.
And look, this blueprint wasn't some flash in the pan. Check out this timeline. Ur was a major player on the world stage for thousands of years. It saw empires rise and fall, and at its absolute peak, it was the capital of a major empire itself. That's a testament to just how solid its design really was.
I absolutely love this quote from our source material because it just shatters a common misconception. The people who built Ur were not primitive. They were brilliant, ambitious problem solvers who organized society, managed incredible logistics, and built breathtaking structures, all without any of the tech we rely on today.
So when we step back and look at Ur's legacy, what we're really seeing are the essential building blocks of civilization: organized religion, urban planning, complex social structures, international trade, massive architecture, and a government run by writing. These are the systems that Ur helped invent for the rest of us.
So, the blueprint for what it even means to live together in a city was first drawn out on the dusty plains of Mesopotamia all those millennia ago. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When you look around your own town or city today, what parts of that ancient design from Ur can you still see at work?